Hello, my name is Tom Jones, and with the Faith Inclusion Network, and I want to welcome you to a discussion about cerebral palsy and faith. Uh, just a bit about the Faith Inclusion Network. One of the things we do, a lot of what we do, is to train faith communities so that to help them include people with disabilities. And so, if you have a church or a synagogue or any other faith community that is trying to do that, trying to provide places of belonging for people with disabilities and their families, we can help. So just please give us a call, contact us, and we'll be more than happy to connect you with some resources that can help you be successful in your inclusion and efforts to help people belong. So today I'm very, very excited. As many of you know, Monday was Cerebral Palsy Awareness Day. And today I'm really excited to have two delightful gentlemen here, Andrew Kaufman and Reverend Patty Collins-Bohrer. Both live with cerebral palsy and have a unique perspective and a lot of great insights to share with us today. First of all, Aaron Kaufman joined the Jewish Federations of North America's Washington, D.C. office in January 2016. Aaron is a senior manager of legislative affairs, and he focuses on disability and poverty issues. Aaron came from the Arc of Maryland, where he lobbied members of the Maryland General Assembly and the Maryland Congressional Delegation on issues affecting Marylanders with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. He worked in the offices of then Congressman, now Senator Chris Van Hollen, and former Senator Evan Bay, as well as the Easter Seals Office of Public Affairs. In addition to working at JFNA, Aaron is a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, where he serves on the Judiciary Committee. Having cerebral palsy, Aaron feels he brings a unique perspective to his work in the House of Delegates and JFNA's efforts on behalf of people with disabilities. Outside of advocacy, he's the instructor in Project Search Montgomery, a job training program for young adults with significant disabilities. Aaron graduated from the University of Maryland, College Park, with a BA in American Studies and with several honors. He's on the executive committee of the Jewish Foundation for Group Homes and is the former vice chair of the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council. He also served on the board of the National Association of Developmental Disabilities Council, as well as the board of Disability Rights Maryland. He is on the board of the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington and former board member of the Union for Reform Judaism. Outside of work, Aaron enjoys following DC sports teams. He is passionate about politics, enjoys movies, live theater, museum, and travel, as well as nonfiction books. Aaron, we're so pleased to have you, and from this bio, we're grateful you had time to participate in this webinar. So very active in so many different ways.
Well, thank you, Tom. And I wish my grandmother was here to hear that wonderful introduction. And it's always just a great honor to be with Reverend Patty. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, thank you. The Reverend Padraic Patty Collins-Bohrer is a priest in the Episcopal Diocese of Rochester and a faith community inclusion specialist or chaplain with Heritage Christian Services, an agency that supports people living with developmental disabilities in Rochester, New York. He helps to connect people served by the agency with faith communities of their choice, offers prayer, builds relationships, and provides support during times of grief, illness, and at the end of life. His interests in ministry include exploring the portrayal of disability in the Bible and sharing his voice as an advocate for more seminarians and clergy who live with disabilities. Reverend Patty lives with cerebral palsy and is highly sought after to preach on his journey to ordination and about disability theology. He assists regularly as a supply priest in the Episcopal Diocese of Rochester, preaching and presiding at the Eucharist. He also serves on the board of the Faith Inclusion Network. Reverend Patty earned his Master of Divinity degree from Colgate Rochester Crozer Divinity School in Rochester. He had a diploma in Anglican Studies from Bexley Seabury Episcopal Seminary in Chicago and Bachelor of Science degree in Media Communications from Medill College in Buffalo. We're excited to have you with us today, Patty. And I will say, I've gotten to know Patty through service on the board, and we've been able to do some things together at the Institute on Theology and Disability and the Disability Ministry Network. So I'm very excited to hear some of the things that Patty and Aaron will be sharing with us. For those of you in the audience, we want this to be interactive. So this will be more of a discussion. But if you have questions, during the discussion, we'd like for you to post those in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll find a time within that discussion to try to address those questions. You can also save those questions at the very end if you choose, but we do want an opportunity for you to interact with our panelists here because they have so much life experience to share with us. So I want to turn this over to Rebecca Wolf, who will be our moderator. Rebecca is our interfaith engagement coordinator and faith inclusion specialist at Finn. And so, Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you to lead our discussion.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I'd like to also welcome both of you. And I thought we would start off by just having you both introduce a little about yourselves more. So, along those lines, could you describe how your experience as a person with cerebral palsy has influenced your life, either personally, professionally, or in other ways? I know it's a very broad question. I will get to the spiritual part of that after, but maybe you could just give us a little more detail about your life and your path.
Sure. Unless Reverend Patty wants to go first, I'll go. Um, I'm not happy that I have cerebral palsy. Living with cerebral palsy, particularly at certain times, is very trying and very difficult. But it gave my life a purpose, and it gave me a mission in life. And I've devoted my life to the inclusion of people with disabilities, be it as a teacher, as Tom was articulating when I used to teach at Project Search Montgomery, or working for the past 10 years at JFNA, which is the umbrella organization for all 146 Jewish federations in the US and Canada. Think United Way, but we call our people federations. Or whether it was working at the ARC, disability inclusion as a result of my disability um, became my life's passion. So it gave my life a mission and a purpose.
Thank you. Yeah, your commitment is really apparent and your passion too. Um, Patty, please, you can introduce too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with you on this panel, Aaron. And this question, I would say that for me, advocacy has always been important to me as a person with cerebral palsy and advocating for what I need and want. And thinking back to my time in school, and I've been a person that has loved school and education and all kinds of opportunities to learn. Um, and really advocating for what I needed. I would have people tell me, oh, it will be more difficult for you because of your cerebral palsy to get around. Um, we can offer you all of these things, all of these supports through New York State and this and that and the other thing. And I was able to listen to what was offered, but really figured out how to do it on my own without as many of the supports as I could have taken. And really feel like I was able to do well, kind of deciding on my own what I needed and what I didn't want. I have chosen, or I did choose to go to smaller schools, was in mainstream education, pretty much from kindergarten through um, all the way through all of my college years and seminary. Um, but really deciding to go to smaller schools, taking my time. Um, and I went to a high school that was designed called School Without Walls in Rochester, which is designed for everyone to um, take smaller classes and really customize their own educational plans just across the board. So that worked out really well for me. Um, Medaille College in Buffalo, where I earned my undergraduate degree, a very small school, and again, very small classes. And then Colgate Rochester, a smaller school as well. So that really worked out for me. Really worked on advocating for what I needed and looked for schools that would really work for me. Um, Also, same thing with employment. Have been able to be in places where I can share what I need, which is so that piece of advocacy and is really how I see my cerebral palsy having played into that part of my life.
If I could just comment on something that Patty said, advocacy is very important, and I'm constantly advocating for myself and, more importantly to me, others, because having cerebral palsy can be frustrating and depressing. But my parents taught me to channel that into fighting for people who are more severely impacted. And I didn't have to look far because my brother, blessed memory, needed assistance with all activities of daily living. And so he served as the catalyst for my advocacy. But I would just say, I don't know if Patty realizes this, but um, or I mean, feels the same way as what I meant to say, but advocacy can be extremely tiring. And it's particularly tiring in the faith community because these are supposed to be people of God.
Mhm. I definitely find that advocacy piece can be a little tiring, and I to um, just talk a little bit about my role in the faith community in the Episcopal Church. Um, with that aspect of advocacy, I go back and forth between wanting to advocate for and needing to advocate for more clergy and seminarians living with disabilities, and actually asking our bishop and other faith leaders to, if there's a way to design a role for me to do that work. So just wanting to be a priest, Patty the priest, who just uh, who just ministers along with alongside a congregation. And my disability shouldn't matter at all. So that's always a kind of a tough balance. But yeah, that advocacy can sometimes make me tired.
And it's interesting to hear your perspectives from sort of different contexts, like the type of areas that Aaron is working in are, different than you, Patty, but that you also share some of the similar challenges. Or, yeah, I'd like to kind of maybe talk about that more, or see if people have specific questions about that since we have a range of areas that you both have experience in.
Yeah.
And since you started to talk about, your experience as a priest, I thought it would be good to have you both just talk a little about your religious or spiritual kind of um, background or affiliation, and then also like what does your spirituality mean to you in your life, and also has your spiritual path been also
Mhm.
influenced by having cerebral palsy in any way?
Mhm. Who would you
Great.
like to go first?
Patty, would you like to continue since you were starting?
Sure, I can go. I can go first. Um, my particular faith tradition within the Christian church, Christian tradition, is the Episcopal Church, and at the center of our tradition is the Eucharist, the sharing the body and blood of Christ, symbols of the body and blood of Christ with bread and wine. And for me, coming to that tradition, I'm a lifelong Episcopalian, um, and I discovered as I was, understanding before I was ordained, but going to church very regularly, and kind of coming to an understanding that because of my cerebral palsy, I was different than many of my able-bodied friends, certainly in the school setting, and sometimes my classmates in school, certainly in grade school, would make fun of me, and something that would upset me quite a bit. Um, but I always knew, even from a very young age, that when I went to church, it was a very calming and centering environment, and especially when we gathered for the Eucharist. And I was not able to articulate it very, very early on, but starting when I was about 17 years old, I started getting this call to explore it more, a call to um, ordain ministry. Again, I was not able to articulate what it meant, but I said, and I kept saying, I've never seen a priest, a person who stands up in front of the congregation to lead worship that looks like me, that has a disability. I couldn't do this. I'll find something else to do. Obviously, I haven't. There's something else I should be doing. But that call never went away. It just kept consistently staying there. And I said, okay, God, I have to explore this. And so I did that, was able to explore a call to ordination and to learn, okay, God, we'll see where this leads. Along those lines, on that journey, I discovered chaplaincy for hospital, certainly hospital chaplaincy, wouldn't necessarily need to be ordained, could share my spirituality. Um, and so I said, okay, I'll explore that. We'll see where the ordination path leads. And it all worked out for ordination and chaplaincy. And I think that being ordained as a chaplain it just gives you more tools, makes you a stronger chaplain. Um, so it was that's how my faith influenced my cerebral palsy, or my cerebral palsy influenced my faith. I would say a question that would come up with the faith leaders when I was going through my ordination process. They would say, "Oh, we're so happy that you feel so welcomed during the Eucharist. Are you saying, we just want to make sure, are you saying you think that everybody in the church gets along? Everyone's happy in the church? And do you want to be in a place where everybody's happy?" And I said, "Oh, I know that not everyone is happy in the church. There's certainly, as in any place, there's politics, there's conflict. But at that particular moment, people come together and really to share the body and blood of Christ and the love of Christ. And I want to be in a place where I can share that with other people and share the story and be able to move alongside people in their faith journeys."
Thank you, Patty. So it really started from a very young age for you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Well, well, Rebecca, there's an expression in Yiddish which is yichus, and yichus means family lineage. And I had good yichus when it came to my Judaism, because my late grandfather, J. Herbert Kaufman, was the head of the Reform movement, which is a branch of Judaism, and as well as another well-known organization, B'nai B'rith International. Uh, so I would say that yes, my faith gives me comfort because there is a very important Jewish teaching called B'Tselem Elohim, which means we are all created in the image of God. And then there's also that statement in Leviticus that says, "You shall not put a stumbling block before the blind." Um, and or curse the deaf. And so my faith is very rooted in my faith gave me comfort because I believed I was created in God's image while I was struggling with coming to grips with my disability. And it really helped that I love my rabbi, Rabbi Danny Zemmel. Additionally, um, growing up and really, I experienced some self-loathing in my teenage years. What was really helpful was that the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington was led by a man who happened to be deaf, and his name was Steve Rackett. And I said, well, if a deaf person can lead a federation, then I can do whatever I want. And then when I turned 13, also there was I've always been into politics. There was a congressman who was in a wheelchair. His name was Jim Langevin, and would watch. See, I'm revealing my nerdiness in this answer, but after school, I would go home and watch C-SPAN, and I'd see him give speeches. And so that also gave me comfort. What I will say, though, is it's very frustrating that faith communities successfully lobbied to get themselves exempted from the ADA. So our altar, which we called a bima, was not accessible. So, like all my other classmates and friends, I could not stand on the altar for my bar mitzvah. I did everything from the floor of the sanctuary. And it wasn't fixed for another 7 years. And I still get pushback from some rabbis about, well, I don't have to be compliant. And you have to understand that, Jews of color want something for my budget, and LGBTQ people want something from my small budget too. So I got a bunch of demographics pushing at me. And what I say is that people miss the intersectionality of it, that there are LGBTQ Jews who are also disabled, and that there are Jews of color who are also disabled, and that while they don't legally have to comply, they have a moral mandate to do so. And if they're not welcoming and accessible, people will drop out, which will hurt the synagogue's financial situation, because sometimes you have to remind people who aren't genuinely committed. The financial argument typically gets to them that you'll not only lose the person with the disability, but you'll lose the whole family. But I think in my experience in the Jewish community, it's gotten better, but there are still some people who think that it's a pain in the tush or a hassle to accommodate people with disabilities. And they have what I call, in closing, Mother Teresa syndrome, where they say, "Aren't I wonderful for doing this?"
Mhm.
Or they'll make it clear they think it's a real pain in the butt um, to help you out.
Hmm. I I appreciate that you shared about some of the legal um, aspects or about what faith communities are required or advised to do. Um, just to ask you again, you go to a synagogue, and what type of Jewish affiliation do you have?
Yes, I go to Temple Micah in Washington, D.C., and it's the Reform Judaism, which is the most progressive branch and largest branch of Judaism. And um, I also, and so one of the things I feel welcome in my faith community, despite the fact that I didn't feel they were prioritizing accessibility as far as much as they should have, because I've been there since I was 8 years old, and so everybody knows me. My dad jokes with me when we go to synagogue that I'm the mayor of the temple because everybody knows me. And maybe the walker is a dead giveaway, but I also think that I hope that it's also part of my personality too, because you want to get to know not people's equipment, but their neshama, their soul.
Mm. So you've been a long-term member of your synagogue, so you really feel like part of the community.
Yes.
Well, that's a very important point. Like it can take time to, well, for anyone to feel part of a faith community, but maybe there's additional challenges when you have a disability as well.
Yes, because, for example, I've talked to people who um, have autistic children or autistic siblings, and they will say that, when their sibling or their loved one makes noise, everybody in the synagogue or the church turns around and looks. Whereas somebody I know with autism, he can't really sit still, but he's been going to the same synagogue his whole life, so he says, my name is John Doe, and I walk around during services. I walk the perimeter. And everybody knows that John Doe does that. So it's about getting to know the person, not the diagnosis, because once you've met one person with a disability, one person with cerebral palsy, you met one person with cerebral palsy, and labels are really for jars, not for people.
That is a great segue into what I was wanting to get into in terms of what might be things that you would like people to understand about cerebral palsy that they may not know or that they might have a misconception about. I feel like that would be an important thing to bring up. Yeah, what are some myths or
Patty can go first this time because I went first last time.
okay.
Sure. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Rebecca, for the question. As I've been thinking about this question, um, I'd say that some of the misconceptions, just from my role as a priest, when um, being ordained and then wanting to certainly supply or assist at the Eucharist on Sundays, as I took a full-time position with first with Heritage Christian Services. So I'm at different parishes each Sunday, which is a delight. But the questions that I would get from folks were especially early on and actually going through the ordination process where you're not able to drive. How will you get places? Um, and what if somebody calls you in the middle of the night with a pastoral emergency? How will you get there? What will you do? And um, at the time, so in Western New York and upstate New York, we only got Uber and Lyft about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago now. So there wasn't that flexibility. But as soon as Uber and Lyft came, I started using that to be able to get around. I said, well, what about calls in the middle of the night? I quickly learned from other clergy colleagues that that rarely happens. And if there is a pastoral emergency, I can say, I'll see you first thing in the morning, or I'll certainly call you on the phone. We'll talk about it. So there are ways around that. Um, and then two other questions that I got, which I think were part of these misconceptions, were, well, certainly if you want to be a parish priest, what if we well, we need to find a call for you. What if we can't find a place to have you serve as a priest? Would you still want to be ordained? And I said, absolutely. My call, my faith is so strong. My call is so strong. I feel I would absolutely want to be ordained. We'll figure it out. Um, and I believe I saw the leader that was asking me these questions almost fall off his chair in surprise when I answered it that way. I said, "Yeah, I want to do this." And the other thing was, I said, I'm willing um, to go through this process in God's time, which I know is a slower process, and I will move through it in God's time." Um, and the committee that I answered that question when I had that conversation with, they were just so amazed that I was willing to move in God's time, was able to really take my time, be patient, that I still hear from people, even now that it's almost 7 years later. They say, "Remember when you said that? That was amazing." And I said, "Well, I was just telling my truth." So I think that these are working with these misconceptions. And I think it all goes back to advocacy of just advocating for what I need.
I think that the number one misconception that people have about people with disabilities is they automatically assume, and maybe this has happened to Patty, maybe he's been luckier than I have in this respect. They automatically assume that I have an intellectual disability, and so they talk to me like I'm five. Like, my late brother was living in a group home, and some students from the University of Maryland Hillel, which is like a Jewish club, were spending time with some of the residents, and everybody has to do chores at the group home. So Alan was saying, I vacuum. Hillary said, I do the dishes. My brother said, I answer the phone. And they said, and Aaron, what's your chore here at the house? They automatically assumed that I was a member of the group home because they judged a book by its cover.
Mm.
And I said, no, actually, I visit my brother as much as I can, but I'm a little bit busy with stat and bio right now. And I actually know who you are because we both have a 3 p.m. class in the sociology building every Monday. And you and we don't have the same class, but I see you walking in every day. And so she said, "Oh yes, now I recognize you." So you see how I educated her with a smile. And there's so much disability related ignorance also. I had a colleague tell me once they didn't know the difference between um, cystic fibrosis and cerebral palsy, and I was frankly appalled by that because one is the lungs and one is the legs. But a lot of what I have to do is educate with a smile. And so there's so many misconceptions. It's also a misconception that it's going to be too much work to hire um, and supervise people with disabilities, that they're not going to be able to do the job. There's also added pressure because last point is that there's also added pressure because I'm often the first person they think with a disability that they've hired. And so that's a lot of added pressure to not expletive this up. Otherwise, they'll never hire somebody with a disability. And I said, yeah, they think, because oftentimes in my various jobs, I've gotten a knock at the door and somebody has said to me, "Oh, I," they think that you're the first person with a disability, but I have ADD or I have learning disabilities, but I look fine, so I can just pass. They don't know. So I think the number one misconception is that we have intellectual disabilities, and people are also surprised that we want the same things, love, a family, etc., because they tend to view us as not interested in that intimacy and that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Right. I wanted this to be a space where people can feel they can ask questions without feeling like embarrassed. Like people might come up to you and ask, I don't even know what kinds of questions, but
Mm.
Well, usually they don't talk directly to me. They talk to the able-bodied person I'm with, and I have to say, "Excuse me, I can answer that."
Mm. Yeah.
do you have an assistant or a
No, just sometimes because people with disabilities are a minority. Um, and so I have a lot of able-bodied friends. And so when I go out to eat with them or I hang out with them, strangers will approach us on the street and ask my parents questions instead of me. Also sometimes, which people mean well, but oftentimes I'm walking down the street and people say, can I pray for God to heal you? Or if you believed in Jesus you could walk, or drink 6 gallons of milk a day and then you'll be able to walk. So you get all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I've gotten those too. The questions where people trying to be well-meaning maybe, but coming up and saying, "What's wrong with you?" And it's like nothing.
I've gotten that too.
And yeah, um, yeah. I would say that the misconception or Aaron, it reminded me of this that so the agency I work for as a full-time chaplain, Heritage Christian Services in Rochester. We support people with developmental and intellectual disabilities in residential settings and day programs, and do all kinds of activities together. And as a chaplain, I will often go to many of these activities, always lots of great dinners and food and activities together. And sometimes and there's sometimes many staff who I'm just meeting maybe for the first time, and they sometimes will have staff, just assume that I must live at one of the group homes, or this or that, or ask, and I do have to remind them that I'm a staff person, which is always an interesting, and I'm happy to do that, but it's very interesting to be in that setting, to have to sometimes remind people that no, I'm actually an employee and I work here and this is my role. And but I think with those similarities between the people with disability, living with disability as I support, and myself, sometimes I do form really strong connections with the people I support, who are able to notice that there are many similarities in the way that we walk, or the way that we both use walkers and things like that. So that actually generates a lot of good conversation, especially among the people I support.
Hmm. Another question I was wanting to ask, you talked about some of the ways that accommodations are made, but there's, different, I was reading different, I guess, aspects of cerebral palsy. Like some people have different needs. So I'm wondering, how can the faith communities accommodate all the needs of people with cerebral palsy? And um, like what have you seen that's helpful, or what have you experienced that's helpful, and what could be better?
A simple question. How can I assist you? It's basic customer service for a faith community. How can I help you? What can I do to make your experience here good? I think that um, what hasn't been helpful is you get a lot of excuses about, oh, it's too much of a liability to assist, or we don't have the staff to assist. People make a million excuses as to why they can't possibly assist, and I really think that's malarkey. Because if there's a will, there's a way, and I also think it's just becoming. I wish you a long and happy life, Rebecca, but you know, the silver tsunami coming, chances are you or Tom or somebody on this call, Miss Rothstein, Nicole, whoever else, may join us in the Walker Club one day. So it's a demographic imperative for people for churches and synagogues and mosques and Buddhist temples and whatever else to accommodate people with disabilities. Because I've gotten into it somewhat with rabbis and stuff like that, where they say, "Well, no one needs a ramp for the bima, the altar. So why should I spend the money?" And I say, "Well, number one, people know if in nicer words, I say if people know you're not welcoming, they're gonna know to avoid your shul. And maybe no one needs the ramp now, but in 10 or 20 years they will need it. So
That's a great point that, there are current needs and then there are future needs that people need to think about. And did you want to add anything, Patty?
Yes, yes. Uh, thank you, Aaron. And yeah, I would agree definitely. Um, with that experience as people are getting older. And just to go back to we were speaking a little bit about the Americans with Disabilities Act and the assumption that the churches would just take it as a moral mandate to make all the accommodations that are needed. And to make sure their spaces are accessible. I'm finding now, as I'm doing more and more advocacy for clergy and seminarians with disabilities, and also just going in and saying, this is what I need. Um, and more and more, I'm getting the response of Patty, you're absolutely right, because you know that our choir can no longer walk up the stairs to the choir loft where they would sing because nobody can climb the stairs anymore. This, that, and all of these things need to be changed, and we're willing to have that conversation. Not necessarily because we think that a lot of people with disabilities will show up, but because the congregation that's already there is just simply not able to use the building anymore, or not easily. So what do we do in that case? Yeah. So definitely see that happening there. Um, I would say as far as the church making accommodations, again, going to different congregations, and I only started using my walker about year and a half, 2 years ago, and was very concerned about how my walker would be um, perceived, accommodated, um, so what would people think? A lot of this was just internalized ableism, um, but on my part. But then just going in and saying, "Yep, I got this walker. Let's figure it out." And so many churches have been willing to work with me. And I had one congregation that said, we can actually we have a smaller altar that we can just move down onto the floor at the crossing in front of the steps. We'll move not only just a folding chair, but we'll actually move the presider's chair down the stairs for you, and we'll make this happen. And it was actually a church that was a place where I went to serve one church, and then you go to another church that's about 20 minutes away. So they only had like 10 or 15 minutes to figure this out, and they did it. And it was amazing. So these are things that I'm seeing that are slowly accommodations people are willing to make, which is really a blessing and really cool to see.
Well, those are some great specific examples, which is, I think it's helpful for people to hear. Um, I just had a quick question before we get to our participants' questions. Because we're an interfaith network, I know, Patty, you've been involved with the Institute on Theology and Disability, and then Aaron, you've been leading the Interfaith Disability Advocacy Coalition. Could you briefly talk about that group, and then if there are ways that people might be able to get involved, or any initiatives, more interfaith type of initiatives that people could know about?
well, I would just like to say we're stronger together. And yes, there's some differences between faiths, for example, in Christianity versus Judaism, whether or not you believe in Jesus. But so much of our work, um, so much of our beliefs are similar that I think we should do more interfaith work, not less. And people are welcome to join IDAC by contacting my fellow co-chair, Reverend Ben Bond, who's an ordained minister for the Disciples of Christ. at I think it's ben.bond at Disability Belongs, but people can um, reach out to Ben either through that address or through Google. We meet the third Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. and we talk about how we can advocate on Capitol Hill and within the administration for people with disabilities, because the impact that Washington has on people with disabilities, with laws like the ADA, IDEA, Medicaid, SSI, is just so profoundly acute that we come together once a month. Because, particularly with some of the people that may not be interested in spending a lot of money on disability programs, the faith voice um, resonates with them.
Great. I will try to. Is there a website or just an email?
Um, you could Google IDAC and see what comes up, but I think the website's a little out of date.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd love to share more resources for people. So I think I would like to, although I have more questions, which I would love to ask you, but I see we have some questions from others, so I want to give them a chance. Tom, would you like to share a few of those?
Sure, sure. Yeah, one of the questions came, all of them kind of came from Jill, but very good questions. What's the most important thing we can do to support our community members with disabilities during this political time? What do you wish more people understood about that?
Yes, I would say, Jill, thank you for your wonderful questions. And good luck to Nicole in um, divinity school. I would just say that there's so much resistance to accommodating people with disabilities in faith communities that we need able-bodied allies. The Chicano movement didn't happen with just Mexicans. The civil rights movement didn't happen with just African Americans. The LGBTQ movement hasn't just happened with members of the LGBT community. So be an ally. Stand up and fight for us and with us, because we're a small community. And to succeed, the disability rights movement within faith communities needs non-disabled allies.
The question David posted, what would be your best advice for non-disabled advocates like me?
Just take time to get to know people with disabilities, and I'm interested in what Patty has to say. Because with all due respect, if you're not disabled, you don't really get it. But you'll have more understanding of the challenges and joys of our lives if you're able to look beyond the walker and get to know the person.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I would say definitely be an ally. Come and ask and get to know a person with a disability, and just to be part of the community. I would say, um, if you did notice that, hey, it looks like you might need help with the door, or it looks like you may need help walking up the steps, I would say, always ask, never assume anything. That's the case there. Also, I would say that, I think the the most current statistic I've heard is that one out of every four persons has a disability. So that usually in a group of people, there are people with disabilities. So I would say just to be aware of that. Not all disabilities are visible. But that, we are all working. We all, working together, we can all support each other. So I just say to be there as an ally is the most important thing. Just to be present.
Well, thank you. We have another question. Do you have a favorite go-to resource or self-advocate for raising awareness of cerebral palsy in inclusion trainings? A YouTuber or essay? Or
Mm.
I think,
Oh,
go ahead, Patty.
oh, good question. Like one single resource. Um, wow. There's nothing that pops up right away. However, um, you know, the Institute on Theology and Disability is just such a great group that Tom you had mentioned before, but a group of uh, of clergy, uh, of Christian, Jewish, and Muslim clergy um, who with disabilities. Also scholars, disabled and non-disabled, and family members that come together to support one another. I find that to be a really wonderful source of support. Um, and that's just huge, but I think that's so important. And you can look up Institute on Theology and Disability on the web. They meet once a year. It's be coming up in Minneapolis as an in-person gathering this year. The other resource, the Disability Ministry Network, just put out a document on sensory worship, which is a great resource for people with disabilities. Um, all together. And just about cerebral palsy, when you meet one person with cerebral palsy, you meet one person with cerebral palsy. We're all affected by the disability, particular condition differently. But I think that this sensory worship material might be a good resource as well. So I don't know, Tom, you could put those, or Tom or Rebecca, you could put those resources in the chat for
I think
disability.
that there, the prejudice and the discomfort about cerebral palsy and other disabilities comes from adults and not from kids. Adults are not born with prejudice and discomforts. And I say that based on the fact that oftentimes I'm walking and a little 3 or 4 year old child says, "What, mommy, what's wrong with him? Why does he use that?" And the mother says, "Shh, shh, shh, don't ask." And that just makes me seem like a foreign object to be scared of. So I think you introduce people to disability at a young age through two great books called Out of My Mind by Sharon M. Draper and What's Wrong with Timmy by Maria Shriver.
Mm, yeah.
And then just Google is your friend. So you can just learn a lot about cerebral palsy by simply Googling it. Like Patty and I are not medical experts, but there's different types of cerebral palsy. There's spastic cerebral palsy, there's hemiplegia cerebral palsy, there's atoxic cerebral palsy. It's a spectrum. So, you just go home and learn something today.
okay.
I'm also finding just the acceptance of cerebral palsy, and Aaron, you mentioned younger people. I've noticed that when I've spoken with um, for example, I'm on the board of the Protestant chapel here at the University of Rochester. And when I go to speak with the students there about disability and faith, or I speak to clergy colleagues who are younger, maybe under 30, under 40, we'll talk about disability, talk about my experiences, talk about, some of what I've experienced, the good and the bad, and they'll say, especially the difficulties, they'll say, "Whoa, why was it so difficult for you? Of course, we would give you what you need." So I think it's changing where the younger people are saying, "We see your humanity, we see what you need," and there are fewer barriers being put up. So I'm hopeful that that will continue.
Well, that is hopeful reason to look to the future.
Yeah.
We're at almost at the end of the hour, but we have a few other questions, and we welcome you if you can to stay on. This has been a fascinating discussion. But Jill writes, is there good enough cooperation between communities of people with different types of disabilities?
Hmm.
Sometimes there's tension, like the ADA almost didn't happen because of the different needs and squabbling between different types of disability groups. But that's why I like working at JFNA and co-chairing IDAC because we advocate for people with all types of disabilities. So are there issues? Yes, but there's an attempt to collaborate.
Yeah, I would say the opportunities for collaboration and just the strength of collaboration is so much stronger than being separate.
Yeah, as it was said, we're better together. We're stronger when we're together.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
I put a few resources into the chat. One is a short film on a Jewish boy's journey with cerebral palsy, and then I mentioned um, Tom and I found it's a Muslim advocate with cerebral palsy. She's a comedian though, so she approaches it from a different way.
Well, she's also given TED Talks on it too, so she injects her humor into it. So uh, may ask her to come to the institute, and but those are some really, really good resources. I just have one other question I want to get to from Jill, and this is for Aaron. What's the best way for me to reach Jewish people with cerebral palsy or physical disabilities in general to share about free, accessible Jewish materials that they might not know about? Is there a Jewish community for this in particular? The disability field is so wide, and it's
Yeah,
uh,
I'm unmuted now, Tom. I didn't realize I was muted. Um, Jill, I'm happy to exchange email addresses with you. But I just think it's word of mouth, like the Jewish Braille Institute and other things like that. I just think there's no really central repository of where you can go to look for resources. But just get out there and be an evangelist about the numerous resources the Jewish community has for people with disabilities, to make some religious metaphors.
and I think the recent seminar, Making Jewish Life Accessible, that was put on by Disability Belongs, it kind of pointed out the need for something like that, a go-to place that where and some collaboration among agencies and nonprofits that address the Jewish people who are Jewish. So um, the more collaboration I think that we have, the better. Okay, well, think we have all of our questions asked. I want to thank Aaron and Patty for a fascinating discussion, and thank you for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and opinions. And it just means so much to raise awareness for all of us who were here. Um, this is being recorded, so it will be sent out to everyone who registered, but also we want to send this to other organizations as well in recognition of Cerebral Palsy Awareness Day, and for us a week, and for many a year. So we will do that and circulate this discussion. So thank you for giving us your expert opinions, and your experience, Patty and Aaron.
And
And
thank you to the
Thank
Faith
you,
Inclusion
Tom.
Network for doing God's work and all that you do. And thank you, Tom. And Patty, it's always a joy to be with you.
Thank you so much. Yes, you too, Aaron. Thank you.
so we
Thank
will
you.
be having a few more webinars upcoming. We're trying to get one together on forming your inclusion team, and in November, we'll be talking about images of God and interviews that have been done with adults with disabilities about their spirituality. A few more webinars would be forming your would be one that Bill Gaventa will do about principles that we need to follow when we're designing an inclusion program for people with disabilities. So a lot of practical things coming up, some interfaith webinars coming up as well. And so we look forward to getting these out to you. And once again, thank you, Patty, and thank you, Aaron and Rebecca, for being our moderator today.
Thank you again.
Yeah.